and they showed me a X-ray. He said a .22 caliber bullet will lodge in the lung, and we can probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high-caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. I remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute.
What? The man can't even make a coherent, logical statement, and you want me to entrust him with my own personal safety and security? Yeah, no thank you. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of WeAreChange.org, and there's a lot of very big news happening today, especially in Ukraine, as the battles there have been intensifying. The situation is getting more serious, as a lot of experts are saying that the future of this major proxy conflict will be decided within just a few days, especially with the key battles happening there. We're going to be talking about that with a live map, as well as some very interesting domestic developments here in the United States, along, of course, with the crazy and wacky statements made by, of course, the current president of the United States. But before going into those statements, we're just going to jump right into it, as, of course, there is some very surprising news happening in the celebrity world, as, of course, a major celebrity here in the United States that's very close friends to a lot of people in politics is facing some very serious charges in the United Kingdom, where 3 men have now come forward and talked about the horrible things that he has done to them when they were children and young adults. This, as of course, multiple accusers of Kevin Spacey here in the United States have met mysterious ends to their lives, and now 3 brave men are coming forward to the point where there's a possibility that the UK government might have to forcefully extradite Kevin Spacey from the United States in order to face these charges. It's important to note here that this is not the first time that Mr. Spacey was accused here. There are multiple events, as of course this man is also known for flying on private airplane jets with the likes of the Clintons and the Epsteins, but since of course he's a powerful entertainment and establishment figure, he has yet to face the full ramifications for his actions, along of course with a lot of other people who knew individuals like Prince Andrew, Jean-Luc Burnet, by the way, who also had a very mysterious end to his life in a prison under, of course, very sketchy circumstances that ended any possibility of us finding out what really was going on here. The Guardian just released a very eye-opening piece surrounding some of the very disturbing and salacious details about this case, as of course here in the United States and probably all over the world, there are thousands of people who were children, were hurt by some very powerful individuals that have yet to have any justice in their lives. Why did that happen? Well, it's important to note here and to remind everyone that the political power establishment in this world, people in the media, people in the government, local police officers, courts, judges, prosecutors, politicians, tech moguls, President of the United States, all colluded, came together and made sure that powerful people, along of course with the National Security Intelligence agencies, were able to hurt children in unspeakable ways and get away with it. Now, that same power establishment is saying, you as a human being don't have a right to defend yourself, we will protect you. Yeah, essentially that's the argument that they're making right now, especially with the coordinated PR push by the establishment, especially in the corporate media, that has been using emotion rather than logic to portray this larger point, which I think is perfectly represented by this picture that essentially has a bunch of sheep agreeing to remove their teeth because teeth are bad and it's what wolves use to hurt other sheep. Some would argue that this is an oversimplification of this very complex issue, and I would agree in certain elements of this, but when we look at the larger arguments being made here, it is essentially give up your rights because you cannot be entrusted with them, we will keep you safe. That's an argument that has been made throughout recorded human history, and the many people that have listened to that argument, obeyed with it, went along with it, essentially paid the ultimate price for it. And now we have the essential mumbo-jumbo dribble coming from the President of the United States that is literally talking nonsense about bullets that could blow out your lung, and he's specifically talking about 9. It's about this size, and it's commonly a small caliber projectile. And you could see from the statements that we started off this video with, he has absolutely no idea what he is talking about. Not only was was his speech dribbled, incoherent, but also nonsensical and absolutely illogical. And I think it's fair to say if he wants you to be disarmed and defenseless, he should do that himself and get rid of his security detail. Now, he won't do that. He won't do that at all. Now, another thing that's very important to note here, that a lot of these politicians that are calling for you to give up your rights, your essential liberties, your ability to defend yourself, are also extremely corrupted individuals like Cory Booker, who some people are saying are solely responsible for the Newark lead water crisis that, of course, created immense suffering for children in his political district. He's also the same politician lecturing about how we need to save the children. So, of course, is Barack Obama, who was known as the drone bomber in his presidential term, where he routinely, personally called off on the drone bombing of individuals, which, according to actually great reporting by The Intercept, recorded how 90% of those personal decisions to drone bomb somebody were, of course, not the intended targets of them, which led to, of course, a lot of civilian deaths, which, according to some estimates, if Obama would have to apologize for every civilian drone victim from his personal decision, that it would take him 3 years to do so. Those are, of course, the official numbers. Some people are saying those numbers are too high. Some people are saying those numbers are too low. What's the truth here? Well, we don't know. The government doesn't really like telling us the truth. They do like empowering and enriching themselves and their friends, as they are literally also trying to push a domestic terrorism bill, which, according to U.S. Senator Rand Paul, is going to paint all law enforcement and military personnel as dangerous, radical racists. This is also the same government that spies and tracks almost every single move you make through a large, huge, unaccountable NSA data collection program, which they lied about. Then they came out and said, well, we need to do this. We actually need more money for this. You actually need to give up your privacy because we're going to keep you safe. We're going to stop all the bad guys before they commit big acts and hurt a lot of people. And they have not done that. Some would say that they have done the opposite of that, and I think it's fair to say historically the bigger lesson that people need to understand here is what usually happens in recorded human history, and that is the correlation that the bigger the governments there is, the less freedom, the less creativity, the less upward economic mobility there is, the less prosperity there is, and the government becomes a lot bigger when they start taking away your rights, which I don't believe we should do under any circumstances. And again, that's just my own personal perspective and opinion. There's also a lot of other things I want to talk about when it comes to this specific issue, especially the secret government plans that came out for apocalyptic events. We're going to be talking about that specific topic later on today on LukeUncensored.com, continuing this larger conversation in more of a broad, open-ended, free speech way, where we get to actually delve into this issue in a more coherent, honest way without the fear of any YouTube censors trying to stop this larger conversation, which again will be happening only exclusively on our members area, LukeUncensored.com, where we provide you a lot of incredible, amazing things. Too many to list here, too many to mention. You probably know about them already, but truly, this is one of the sure ways to not only grow an independent media operation, but to provide a service that I think right now is absolutely essential for a lot of people to get, especially during these very key, critical times. Lots of things available for you. Go to LukeUncensored.com right now to find out more of the details, more of the value that we offer you on our own platform that, of course, we get to say and do whatever we want on. Now, another thing in history that's unavoidable, it's, of course, conflict. It's, of course, war. We got one going on right now in Ukraine, which represents a larger proxy conflict between the West and the East geopolitically. This is a conflict that actually has been going on a lot longer than a lot of the experts predicted it to be. We told you that this was going to be a very long conflict, and we're going to reiterate that this could be a conflict that's going to be potentially lasting for over 10 years or even longer than that. But with the latest developments that have been happening in Ukraine, I do believe that we have reached a very key critical point right now, that within the next few days, the future of this conflict will be determined, as of course there are major moves being made by Ukraine and the Russians in this region that are worth talking about, since of course these significant moves, and if they're able to accomplish them, will essentially change the tide of the war and the future of this conflict. Very interestingly, Ukraine, that used to be on the defensive, is now on the offensive, and they have launched an offensive down into the south of Ukraine, into the Kherson region, which of course course, the Russians were able to easily capture, allegedly. This is because the Ukrainians did not blow up the bridges leading to that specific town. Some people say that there was some foul play here, some sabotage. This, of course, was a few weeks ago, and now it looks like the Ukrainians are launching an offensive in this specific region. Why are they doing this? Well, that's because the Russians are launching another offensive, and they're focusing more on the Donbass region, where they are sending most of their hardware and equipment to in an attempt to try to encircle Ukrainian forces by being able to capture a lot of land in the Donbass region. And with the Russians sending most of their forces to this specific Donbass region, the Ukrainians see an opportunity to attack from the south. They're also trying to attack from the north, and they have launched a counteroffensive in Kharkiv. The Ukrainian forces now being on the offensive are creating more of a risk to their soldiers, and there are accounts of them losing a significant amount of them, especially with now Russia being on the defense. Why is Ukraine trying to take the north of Ukraine? Well, there's a major supply line here that leads to Lyman, and if the Ukrainians are able to make significant victories in the north, they could potentially cut off Russia from one of its major supply lines, which would dramatically set them back. Now, if the Russians are going to be successful in the Donbass region, this essentially would mean the entrapment, the encircling of many Ukrainian forces, which would put them in a very desperate situation, which of course would change the tide of the war. The Russians also recently successfully captured the city of Lyman, which was a major transportation hub, a key strategic location where of course there was a railroad where the Ukrainians were able to send arms shipments very easily, very quickly and effectively from the west, from Poland, to Kiev, to Lyman. But now with Lyman in Russian hands, getting a lot of that Western-backed equipment is going to be a lot more difficult. And as this battle wages on, it's going to be important to see if Ukraine is going to be able to cut off some of the supply chains, if the Russians are going to be able to push from the Donbass region, if the Ukrainians will be able to get near Crimea. And according to a lot of military experts, that will be decided, all of course within the next few days, as of course people are keeping a close eye on these major moves made by these two countries, which of course we're going to be keeping a very close eye on, since there is a lot on the line on these new offensives. This as Russia is continuing to saber rattle, as they just test fired their latest hypersonic missile, which they're calling Zikran. Russia is also negotiating with Turkey about the future of their involvement in NATO, their voting power in NATO, their support for Ukraine. Russia could potentially be using Syria as a pawn in all of this, as the president of Turkey announced that there might be an operation by Turkey inside of Syria, something of course that Russians could use as a bartering tool with their support and involvement in that particular region in some kind of strategic trade-off potentially that could happen here. There's of course a lot of pieces at play here, as of course Russia has announced that its liberation of the Donbass region is a quote unconditional priority to end the war. Ukraine on the other hand is hoping for regime change, which is probably unlikely in Russia, no matter how many Western articles are calling for it, as of course the president of Russia is encircled with a lot of his loyalists and has metaphorically buried himself into the power establishment of Russia. We have also seen a very swift change of the narrative, especially in the Western media, especially by individuals like Henry Kissinger. There's also of course Fareed Zakaria, who also is another member of the Bilderberg Group, who is talking about giving Putin a way out of this entire conflict. Fareed Zakaria also made the argument that Putin would become more dangerous if he's cornered, and that we do need to give him an easy out, an easy victory here. Those were the arguments made by Henry Kissinger. This as the United States has just announced that it will not be giving Ukraine a rocket system that could of course reach Russia. This as the United States has been spending billions of dollars sending it to Ukraine. How much money are we spending on this entire conflict? What's the economic incentives here? Well, of course Putin is making that argument, as he is specifically talking about inflation and how the sanctions, the economic conflict that's really happening between the East and the West is making the situation worse here. How will this conflict end, if it ever will? What will be the price for it? Well, we're going to find out within the next few days, weeks, months, potentially even years, potentially even decades. To me, any war is just a failure of civilization. It's ridiculous. People are losing their lives for the whims of politicians, which should show you how absolutely ridiculous this whole entire situation is. To me, it's wrong, it's immoral, and we should be doing everything in our power from all the parties involved here in order to try to, of course, de-escalate and stop this further tragedy that's unfolding right in Europe. A lot of people never thought it would escalate to this point. It has, and it might even escalate to a further point, which is crazy, in my opinion. Again, that's my perspective. That's my opinion. This is what I personally believe in. And if you thought I was wrong in any way, shape, or form, let me know why in the comment section below. I always appreciate your constructive criticism, your voices, and you guys being able to share these videos with your friends and family members if you thought I provided any kind of value. The type of value that I do try to strive and provide is, of course, concentrated fully now on LukeUncensored.com, which I hope you join me right after this video for the second video, the continuation of it on our particular platform. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for a lot more here on wearechange.org.